the whole globe is a village, and you can tap resources at any part of the globe to ensure that you make the best resource available to create a product or a service or whatever. It is but natural that it has to be seen like that, and there's no substitute to technology. The second is this whole concept of multi-skilling.
Right.
An example, I don't know how many in the audience here are familiar with, I'm sure, on banking. 70% of the footfalls in a bank in India over the last 10 years has come down. So if there were 100 guys walking into the banks over the last 10 years, it's just 30 guys walking. The other 70 guys use banking, and they use multiple products of the bank through the power of technology, their smartphones, their what have you. Now, if I'm a banker, career banker, and all I've learned is to sit across and have a cup of tea with my client and speak to him endlessly to get one of his credit passed, I'm suddenly finding myself, I talk into space. There's no one to talk to, but the bank expects me to do 10 other jobs. So sell a home loan, maybe sell a mortgage, sell something else, all through the power of net. So I personally think the days in India, particularly to see is technology required, is the decision is concluded. We need how much of technology is required, what will be the optimality of mix between a face-to-face, and it's maybe depending on the industry and the space, there would be different levels of maturity curve.
Well, and two additional points there. I mean, one is the pace of change has accelerated. So we used to see technological change every 20 years, then every 10 years. Now it's under 5 years.
Yes.
I mean, I was with the CEO of Ola Cabs this morning. That company started less than 5 years ago. I mean, it's amazing the pace of change that's happening. So you either adapt or die. That's the reality of what's happening in the world. The other point is India hasn't seen this because of the demographics in India. But in the Western world, the population is aged. And so we're seeing a turnover in the Western world of 40% of the existing workforce. All the baby boomers in the US and in Europe are retiring.
Right.
And because most companies had operated based on time, the older you were, the more senior you were. So in the pyramid of each corporation, that 40% is not a dispersed 40%, it's a top 40% that's about to retire. And there aren't enough Gen Xers to replace those people.
Right.
So you have a massive crunch in the West to find experienced talent to fill these jobs.
Absolutely.
So what are they doing? They're coming here. So your competition is no longer just other Indian companies. Your competition now is the whole world.
So in this sort of globalizing of the workforce, so to speak, Bipin, I think Adam raised that point here that if somebody is sitting in the Airbus headquarters in France, there's a job vacancy, and the right candidate is sitting in Bangalore. How do the two sort of come together?
See, one thing is the technology which is playing a very great role, because a lot of platforms we use of the headquarter, and we can today with the technology, even if you are from the distance, you are extended team of your own team sitting in the headquarters. So we don't feel that we are away from them. It is just a one building or other building you are sitting in a same global village. So that's one thing.
But what about the issue of working in silos? And that's something that Adam referred to. That was just as far as the HR function is concerned. But typically companies per se, that is again a struggle. Everyone's working in silos, especially when it comes to connecting across geographies. How do you overcome that?
I think so India is a good platform for that. And personally, I have seen also with my engineers and all, lot of work which are working in the silo, that becomes much easier to work in India, whether the people from the Spain, people from...
So 1 second, you're saying actually it's better to work in silos in India?
No. I'm not talking about the working in the silo, but I'm talking about India is a better platform where we are not working in a silo.
Okay.
Where we are not working in a silo in the one place, everybody can work with the same team sitting at the same place. So India gives a good platform for that. I personally seen that lot of problem we have resolved, even of a parent company who are working in a silo different place, but India has resolved this problem.
So you're saying you're far more integrated.
Yeah,
Adam, what's been your biggest, or what are the observations that you've been making as you interact with companies? Because you've been interacting with very young companies like Ola. You've also got very large conglomerates who've been existing for almost, more than almost half a century, if not more.
That's right.
So, what's been your observation in terms of what are the biggest issues when it comes to people management?
So what's interesting is we also work in not only every region of the world and every size company, but also every vertical. So all different types of industries. And so our initial assumption going in was that companies would be very similar who were in the same market. So if you were a banking company, you'd be like other banks. If you were a retail company, you'd be like other retail companies. And what we found is that the similarities are actually more consistent, not by industry and not by geography, but by size. So big multinationals are like all other big multinationals, and small high growth companies are like all other small high growth companies. So big multinationals have significant issues around succession management. How do we identify the right people to become leaders in the organization? Often because of the silos that it formed and the fact that in those silos, based on career ladders, people had relatively narrow spans of experience. So as you move up in the organization, you're expected to control wider parts of the organization, but all of your work has just been in one area.
Right.
Small companies have a really big issue around paying for performance. How do I identify my top performers in a company where everybody's pretty good? Because the company is growing fast. So when a company is growing fast, you don't worry about who's good and who's not good. Everybody's good enough. You just need more people. And so how do you identify the right people and reward the right people so that they stick around?
And how do you do that, Verity? I mean, when you come to large companies, and in India we have especially promoter-led companies where it's a sort of a boys' club, or it's a club that exists and everyone's sort of working towards pleasing the promoter. And can technology really, sort of dissect or cut across some of those legacy issues which are there, especially when it comes to the senior management?
Well, if you look at the startups, which is Bangalore is the startup capital today, and it's very interesting that you had mentioned this about a big league and the small league. I was just looking at it. The best of talents from large corporates are in a position to move to smaller companies and startups at, let's say, 30% of the compensation they got. And it's